Hi friends, welcome to my sewing room. Today I'm going to walk through some of the steps on making the masks for first responders, hospitals, doctors' offices, whoever might make use of these masks in the coming weeks. So I know we're all eager to get started, and some of the instructions out there are a little bit vague. So I'm going to walk through two separate videos. One is for if you have a serger and you're going to be using the serger as well as your sewing machine, and then there's a separate set of instructions for just using the sewing machine. So I will try to go through and explain everything as best I can and show you in video, and also I'm going to assume that you have most of the basic tools at home. If you don't have it, then improvise and you can figure it out. So let's get started. First of all, some of you may have only received a template that has this smaller version, and it tells you to add an inch onto the straight end. Well, I've made a template that I can put on cardstock that has the larger for the front of the mask and the smaller for the inside of the mask. So this mask is 2-layered, and this extension that you see over on the right is what's going to allow us to put a pocket on the inside of the mask so folks can insert a filter, and this pretty much just extends the life of whatever filter they're using, and they can use this mask that we're making as an outside covering that they can wash, and it extends the life of whatever they're using on the inside. So I'm going to assume that you've cut out both of your templates to lay on your fabric. So for the larger of the template, you're going to want, for both, you're going to want 100% cotton fabric, but you want your thicker, more durable fabrics on the outside, and probably the more decorative colors and patterns. Use that for the outside. And if you have some plain, not so interesting fabrics, use those for the inside, for the smaller cuts. So I've already cut a stack of fabric, but I always want to make the point that you save yourself a lot of time if you stack your fabric with right sides together like this. So now you can take, and I've got several layers here, but you can take 2 of these, and this is ready to make one mask, and we're going to start our sewing on this large outside curve. So you've saved yourself a step on having to match things up by cutting these with the right sides together. So now I have just cut 3 layers, 3 masks worth in one cutting, and I've got my right sides together, so it's ready to go. Now that you've cut your fabric for both your outside of your mask and your inside of your mask, and you'll see that one is shorter than the other. This extension over here on the outside of the mask creates our channel for the elastic at the end. We've got these, and we're going to serge along the big curve on both our outside and inside piece. And you can chain these together just like you are when you're quilting to save thread and save time. And once you get going, you can actually chain quite a few together. You'll see that I chained quite a few of my internal parts together, and the next thing we're going to do is chain, or we're going to serge the outside edges on all 4 edges of our mask. So our 2 raw edges at the outside of our on the outside mask, we're going to serge this edge and this edge. We're going to do the same on the inside of our mask. Separate your pieces. You don't have to worry a whole lot about trimming all the tails off. And because we're going to put this thing together so quickly, I don't even think you really need to worry about using the, what is the stuff? Pam, what's the name of the stuff? Anyway, the liquid stuff that you put to, oh, fray check, that's it, yeah. I don't really think we even need to use fray check because we're going to put this together right now before our very eyes. So putting the right sides together, matching up the center seam at the top, and that's really what's important. Match up your center seams. And then lay these flat. And serge along that edge. Great, now you've got your top edge serged together. We're going to do the same along the bottom edge, making sure you match up the center seam. And then start all the way out at the end. Okay, now we can trim off our tails. If you have any other tails. Now what we're going to do is turn this right side out, and you'll see that you will have the shell of this mask I missed a step. If you really want it to be lovely, I missed a step. It's not totally necessary because we have serged and we have finished it, but if you want a really pretty finished edge, then you can turn this before you get to this stage, and you can sew that nice and flat. But I didn't, and I'm not going to lose any sleep over it because we're not launching the space shuttle. We're making fabric masks. So we're going to press this nice and flat, and when we do, we're going to press these corners on about a 33-degree angle, as you saw in our pattern. I'll get the pattern to show you. See that angle? That's what we're going to fold in, because that's going to help us create the entrance for our channel when we eventually turn this over and sew it down. So go to the ironing board, press down the entire thing to make your seams nice and flat, and then press these over on a slight angle so that we can turn them when we come back to the sewing machine. You can see that I've pressed my corners down and I've pressed my angles to make my channel, and now I'm going to tuck it just underneath so you can't see it, but I'm going to pull this back. We don't want to sew this shut because this is our pocket where they're going to be able to insert a filter inside and have the straps still come out. So I've tucked that just underneath, and I'm pulling back the pocket portion, the liner, and I'm going to back stitch a couple of stitches. I'm going to go forward. Super fancy cutting mechanism did not work that time. It happens. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Back stitch a few for strength. So now we have the basic mask completed. We can cut all of our strings off later. So we've got our basic mask completed. Well, now we're going to sew the channel along the top edge of the mask so that we can insert a wire if needed, or if it's desired. Now, you may not have wire available, that's not a big deal, but we're still going to sew the channel so that that's available to insert a wire. And we're going to do that 1/2 inch from the top edge with a straight stitch. You're going to start right at the, go forward. We're going to start at right at the edge of the internal part of the mask. You don't want to sew over your elastic channel. So now we have the channel across the top to insert our wire. And the wire that I've used, I'm going to move the iPad a little bit. So the wire I'm using is coated gardening wire, and I use a little over 6 inches, about 6.5 inches. Shoot it down the back of the sewing cabinet. Okay, let's try that again. I have pieces all over the place. Let's see if I can do this without sending it flying. There we go. I used that tool all day yesterday and I didn't do that once. So now we take another little pair of pliers here And I'm just going to turn that outer corner just into a little tiny curl so that it's soft and nobody's going to poke themselves with it in the mask. Kind of flatten that out so it's nice and straight and flat. So my curl is flat coming around this way. I'm going to make this other curl the same way. And there we have both ends of our wire, so it's nice and soft. And I'm going to insert it to that top channel. Make sure it's even. And just give it a little bit of contour so you can see how that's going to help keep the mask fitted to your face. And these ends are nice and soft so they're not going to poke you. And now we're just going to sew a vertical stitch on either side. The end of the wire is here, so I'm going to sew my channel just a little bit to the outside of it on either side so that that wire can't come out. So now I've stitched my channel closed on either end so that wire can't come out. And now I'm going to thread the elastic through the elastic channels with the tried and true safety pin method. It's very technical. And I'm using 3/8 inch elastic, and it's a 22-inch length. So you feed it through one side, keep it nice and flat. Go through the other side. And now we're going to take these two ends, we're going to zigzag stitch these two ends together. I'm going to move back to the sewing machine so we can just finish this and show you the finished product. And that, friends, is it. Now we're going to pull that that raw edge of the elastic into one of the channels so that we don't have to look at it. And voila, this is the finished product. You can fit. That channel got a little tight, but there you can see how this will fit on your face. This will go onto the back of your head. It's nice and stretchy. It's soft. You can insert another type of filter, a better paper filter, but this helps preserve the life of that filter. And we're done. And that took us about 15 minutes.